Hey mamas, you're listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast, the only podcast teaching you how to balance your work, motherhood, and wellness. I am Dr. Amber Thornton, clinical psychologist and mama wellness consultant. Each week we dive into tips and strategies and much more so that you too can become a balanced working mama. Let's dive in. Hey mama, if you need a boost in your wellness but just not sure where to begin, the Balanced Working Mama Wellness Assessment is just what you need. With 28 questions, we assess for 9 critical areas of wellness for working mothers. The wellness assessment brings much needed understanding, clarity, and direction that you otherwise wouldn't have. So you can then go on to better move forward with your wellness and your motherhood journey. The best part is that you get to review results with me and you get personalized recommendations for how to move forward. To learn more and to go take your wellness assessment, head over to balanceworkingmama.com today. Hey mamas, it's me, Dr. Amber here. So we are here for episode 35, and of course it's going to be a little bit different because, as you all know, I have a new baby and things just look a little bit different for me right now. I did want to record this episode because I wanted to talk about my birth story. So there won't be a check-in. There might not be any tips or shout outs. It's really just going to be me talking about my birth and what happened and how it felt for me. All the while, I'm going to be cooking breakfast. So excuse the audio for this episode. Hopefully you all can hear me fairly well enough to, hear what I'm saying and what's going on. And also thank you all for supporting me and riding with me, all the love and support. It has really meant a lot to me in the past few weeks because things have not been easy. So I think, I'm making oatmeal. Hold on. Let me actually just open this so that it's not so loud. While I do that, I will let you know Eden is 2 weeks today, and she is sleeping right now. So that has allowed me to make my oatmeal. And I typically make still cut oats, which usually takes like 30 minutes because they're fancy. But I now, during postpartum, eat instant oatmeal because it takes 2 minutes. So those are the small changes you got to make when you have a baby. All right. So I want to start from the top. My birth story. This was an interesting experience, you all. As most of you know, I was hoping to achieve a VBAC. I did have a C-section for my first pregnancy with my son. And the C-section, the whole experience was really frightening for me. And it was one that I did not want to go through again. So I really set my intentions and everything on hoping for the VBAC. And as you probably already know, I was not able to achieve my VBAC. And here we are. So let me just start from the top. Eden was born on April 16th. And what that meant for me is that I went into labor on Thursday, April 15th. And it was so funny because it happened basically exactly how it happened with my son. It was about 9 o'clock in the evening, 9 o'clock at night. My husband and I were just chilling, watching TV. C3 was in bed, and I felt crampy. So I had some cramps. Just, I don't know, something wasn't feeling right. And so I told him, I was like, tonight might be the night. Because basically this whole week, I had been saying, like, what if it's today? What if it's today? And of course it hadn't been that day. But that time, I just felt like something was different. All the while, mind you, I was eagerly waiting for her to get here because I was getting very impatient. I felt extremely heavy. I felt very fatigued. I was just so ready to have this baby because I needed to be on the other side of this pregnancy. So, with that, we're watching TV Thursday evening, April 15th. We were actually watching, what's that movie called? It was on Netflix. I'm rinsing my strawberries if you hear water. Oh, Country Cowboy, something like that, with that guy from Stranger Things and Idris Elba. It was a great movie. We watched that. Right afterwards, I got up to go get ready for bed, and I felt a gush. And as we know, that gush is the water breaking. My water broke on the couch as I was trying to go to the bathroom. It wasn't a huge gush. It didn't make a big mess, but it was definitely something I felt. And I was like, oh, this is it. So I told my husband. He was like, wait, are you serious? I was like, yeah. Now, of course, I went to the bathroom to check, and yes, my water had broken. So that was the moment when it was like, okay, this is game time. Because unlike the first time with my pregnancy, there was a lot to be done to prepare before we actually could go to the hospital. I had to go to the hospital fairly immediately because I was GBS positive. And what that means is Group B strep positive. It's a test that everybody gets around the 36th week, I believe, to see if you hold a bacteria called Group B strep in your vaginal canal. Most of us do. And for some of us, there might be excess. And long story short, if you have that, they really highly encourage you to get to the hospital so you can receive antibiotics before you go into labor. So there was a lot for us to get done before we got to the hospital. Namely, we had to get our son to his grandma's so that he could be taken care of. So that immediately started the clock. Um, I went upstairs to go finish packing my hospital bag. My husband started to pack his because, of course, he hadn't started. And we mutually got our son together, his bag, and then woke him up because he had already been asleep. So it had been about 40 minutes that had passed with us getting everything together, all the bags, his bags, my bags, and then my husband and my son were out the door. Within that span of time, my contractions had gotten intense. Opening some dates. If you hear noise, that's what that is. My contractions had gotten pretty intense. Which was a surprise to me because with my first pregnancy, things took a little bit more time. It went a little bit slower. But with this one, it was like as soon as my water broke, contractions started. And so I struggled a bit because I was not ready for them to start so soon. So my husband and my son left to take my son to his grandma's house, which is about a 20-minute drive. So I knew he would be gone for about 40 minutes. And so it was me at home for about 40 minutes just trying to ride out contractions. That time was tough because I was by myself and I was nervous. I think even though I was really waiting for Eden to get here, I wanted her to be here, I was still really nervous about the idea of trying for my VBAC. And just going through the process, there were so many unknowns with regard to whether I would be able to achieve a vaginal birth, whether she was as big as the doctors had been telling me this whole time, whether there would be some complication. And so not only did I have to go through the physical labor, but also the mental aspects of just gearing up for all the unknowns. I think when anybody's going into birth and getting ready for that experience, there's so many things that you just can't plan for, you can't anticipate. And that was exactly the case. Let me rinse my hands real quick. Some water. So I was laboring at home while my husband and my son were out. I called my doula, let her know that it had gone down, and she was on standby, and she let me know, hey, whenever you're ready for me to come or to get going, you give me the ring. And so even with that, I was hesitant because I just wasn't sure how long this would go or how fast it would go. But I had to trust my gut, and I actually let her know, hey, can you just meet us at the hospital? Because I feel like this is going to go a lot faster than we're anticipating. So she did exactly that. So eventually, my husband and my son got back home. Sorry, not my son. My son was at grandma's. Eventually, my husband got back. He was ready to transport me to the hospital. And again, my contractions were tough. It was hard to breathe through them. At that point, it was about 10:30. I was crying, trying to get in the car because I just did not want to sit down. It was so uncomfortable. It was really hard, y'all. It was so hard. Luckily, the hospital was only like about 10 minutes away. We got to the hospital, took me up to labor and delivery, and things got going. Um, let's see, what happened when we got up to labor and delivery? I feel like everything is just a blur at this point. When I got to the hospital, of course, they checked me to see how dilated I was, and I was already 6 centimeters. 6 centimeters. Again, a surprise to me because with my first pregnancy, when I got to the hospital, I was 4 centimeters. And so, again, this all went so fast. It went very fast, much faster than I was anticipating. Um, and my goal or my plan with regard to pain management was to get to about 7 or 8 centimeters before I did get an epidural because I knew that I wanted an epidural, but I wanted one later in the process so that I could be a little bit more mobile, or at least that's what I thought was going to happen. That's not what happened, but that's what I thought was going to happen. So I was at 6 centimeters and my pain was excruciating. So at that point, I made the decision to go ahead and get my epidural, and I was not calm about it. I was yelling and letting them know, hey, I need help. Help, help, help. Um, y'all, let me just say, labor is something that if I never have to go through again, I will not be mad, okay? Just shout out to the women who can do this shit naturally. Y'all are the real MVPs because that is not my ministry. And um, yeah, if I don't ever have to experience labor again, I will not be upset, okay? So either way, um, one thing that happened that should not have been a surprise for me, um, is that it took a really long time for them to find a vein to get my IV, my medication started. And that was because my veins are terrible. It's always been the case for me throughout my life. Whenever I go to the hospital or the doctor, it's really hard for them to find a vein to draw blood or do anything. And so, because of that, it felt like forever that they were trying to find a vein to give me medication that I needed. Well, it just took forever, y'all. Like, took forever. But we finally were able to make it happen. Got my epidural, and I felt a lot better. But I think one thing that happened again that I did not anticipate is that that epidural was way stronger than any of us thought it would be. So in my head, I was told if you get your epidural a little bit later in the game, you'll be a little bit more mobile to be able to push into different positions. That was not the case for me. When I got my epidural, I'm assuming maybe because it seemed like I was in so much pain, the anesthesiologist gave me a really big, hefty dose, and it completely numbed me out. I could not move anything from the waist down. So there was really no option in terms of me moving, getting in different positions to push in different ways like I thought I was going to. Um, So much so that at one point I remember asking them, am I breathing okay? Because it felt like I was having difficulty breathing. Still to this point, I'm not sure if it was because of my anxiety, because I had a lot of anxiety just leading up to all of that with regard to the experience, or if it really was the fact that my epidural was so heavy. But luckily, my doula was there to reassure me that I was breathing, I was fine, I was safe. And that was something that I needed to hear constantly throughout this experience because I was scared. I think that's the one thing about childbirth, especially for Black women. This experience is one that often comes with a lot of fear, and it is unfortunate that it has to be that way because birth should not be fearful. It should not be scary, but for me, it was. And I don't know how to make it different or make it less scary or fearful for me, but it felt very scary. So I needed that constant reassurance that I was okay, that I was safe, that everything was going to be fine. So as I am telling you all, my labor progressed quickly. I dilated to 10 centimeters in about 6 hours. So about 3 in the morning, I was ready to start pushing. But at that time, baby Eden had not yet come down as far as she could. So they decided to just let me rest, just kind of like naturally let the contractions do what they were going to do to bring her down a little bit further so that maybe we wouldn't have to work so hard with pushing. So I rested for about an hour or so, and it was so nice to just lay there and just rest and just be um, with the hopes that that would help progress my labor. About an hour later, they woke me up and we started pushing. And at that time, I started to feel, again, some fear just with regard to the VBAC. Because as you all know, the potential risk of a VBAC is uterine rupture, which can happen during contractions, but also during pushing. And so that's when I started to feel nervous about that part of this scenario. Will I rupture when I start pushing? Again, my doula was so helpful in reassuring me that you are fine. We are here. You are in the safest place possible. If something happens, they know what to do. The doctors also were so encouraging too. The doctor let me know, hey, right now everything is going really well. You look good. Things are going fine. I have no concerns for you right now. This is safe. So we started pushing, and we pushed and we pushed and we pushed. Pushing with an epidural is confusing because, of course, you can't feel anything. You have to go off of, what the people around you are saying in terms of it's time to go, it's time to push. And that's essentially what I had to do. Um, I was told that I was pushing correctly, evidenced by me pooping. And that is just a fact of pregnancy and birth. Like, women poop when they're pushing. So it was an indication, like, yeah, I'm pushing well, I'm pushing right, but still, my pushing was not getting baby girl down where we needed her to be. Long story short, I pushed for 2 hours. Um, 2 hours. And again, this part of the story also, in the moment, I was starting to reflect back on my first pregnancy because it was the very same situation where we were ready to go. We started pushing, and baby would not come down to where they needed to be. And then there started to be concerns about the pressure that was being put on baby, on their head. Um, it was literally the same situation. So in this current situation, pushing for about 2 hours, doctor letting me know that baby just wasn't coming down like we really would like to see. There was some concerns about what was going on for her in terms of pressure being put on her. And let's try for another hour. At that point, I did tell my doula I just wasn't feeling as hopeful anymore about this VBAC because it started to feel eerily similar to my first pregnancy where we pushed and pushed and pushed, and then I had to have a C-section. My doula encouraged me, empowered me, supported me, told me we can do this, and we continued to push. Um, but unfortunately, it was not getting her down to where she needed to be. So the doctor had to have a serious chat with me and say, hey, this is what I recommend at this point. I do think the C section is going to be our best option. So the funny thing about that talk that the doctor had with me about recommending the C section was that there was something in me that already knew this was going to happen. And I think, sometimes there's that intuition or that voice that just lets you know, um, what's to come. And for me, if I'm honest, I had a feeling that this would be the case, but I wanted to give this my all. Um, I didn't want another C-section. I did want to try for a VBAC. I did not want to give into fear regarding my chances for a VBAC. I still wanted to push through. And soon I started to get the sense that a C-section was likely going to be the thing for me. And so I reluctantly um, accepted, or that's not the right word, I agreed to move forward with the C section. That was a crushing moment for me. Um, because all the things that I was trying to avoid, all the fears that I had about what my postpartum experience would be like if I had to have a C-section, I, I now had to face. I did not want to have another surgery, especially with having a toddler at home. I remember being a nervous wreck during that procedure because it was my first time having major surgery and it was so frightening. I didn't want to have another birth where I couldn't be present because I was so consumed with fear. I didn't want to be in pain and I had to face all those things and it was a tough moment for me, but I knew we had to move forward because ultimately at the end of the day, we needed to get Eden here. She needed to get out of my body. We needed to get her here and this is what we needed to do. So, we moved forward with the C-section. My C-section was, again, pretty similar. I was so afraid. And I hate, part of me is, reluctant to even share this because I don't want other women and other mothers to go through their experience if they do have to have a C-section and be fearful because that does not have to be the case. There are a lot of women who experience very beautiful C-sections, very peaceful C-sections who are not afraid. But for me, I had so much anxiety about the situation that it really consumed me and once again didn't really allow me to be as present as I wanted to be during that birth. I was so focused on, okay, we need to make sure that Eden's okay and then we need to make sure that I'm okay so that I can be here to come back to my family. That was my main priority. Everything went well during the procedure. There were no complications, there were no concerns. The nurses and doctors were laughing and joking the whole time because things were going well. They were doing fine. Everything was going well, but still within me, I was so nervous. I was so afraid. I was so fearful. And that's just not what I wanted. And I, it is what it is, yeah, I was afraid. I'm very grateful that things went well, that there were no complications with the procedure, that Eden is here. And I will, again, be happy if I never have to do that again. Eden was born on the 16th at 9:20 in the morning, and I'm so glad that she is here. Um, this has been a journey, an experience for sure. Um, just with going through the pregnancy, it was a tough pregnancy because I did have a toddler and I did feel really run down, really fatigued, really heavy during this pregnancy. We moved. We had so many things going on with Balance Working Mama, so the pregnancy was tough. Um, the birth and delivery was also tough, but I'm glad that she's here and she's now a part of our family. Now we are going through postpartum, and postpartum has also been really tough for me. Um, I, a few days ago, found out that I have some postpartum preeclampsia, which completely threw me off guard and caught me by surprise because preeclampsia is not something that I experienced during any of my pregnancies. And so that's something that I'm being monitored for. I'm monitoring my blood pressure at home, and it's scary. I think this pregnancy and this postpartum experience, there's been a lot of fear for me, and I've really had to put in a lot of work to really manage my mind and my thoughts, my anxiety around this experience, and it's tough, and so I'm not going to lie to you all. This postpartum experience is not the fun, beautiful, you know one that I had the first time. This one is a battle every day with regard to me staying positive about how I'm doing, and staying positive about um, my body and its ability to recover. Luckily, Eden is such an easy baby, and I'm grateful for that. And I think the the universe, God, the ancestors knew that I needed something else to just kind of like anchor me and ground me, and she has definitely been that for me. It has not been a struggle with her, but more so with me, um, staying positive and really believing in my recovery, and that is exactly what I'm working on now. So I am really hopeful that as the days go on, I will be on the other side of this as soon as possible. Doctors continue to remind me that the cure for preeclampsia is birth, but also to be far removed from birth as possible. And so, typically, for most women, within 6 weeks, the preeclampsia really clears up. Right now, we're at 2 weeks. I'm really looking forward to getting through the next 4 weeks so that my body can adjust and get back to a more stable place. I think I will feel so much better when we're at that point, and we can just be and live and experience and feel joyful. So I'm so thankful that I've been able to share this story with you all. Again, I thank you all for just supporting me, encouraging me, being here, and also continuing to support Balanced Working Mama. It means so much. I know so many of you all have reached out to me on Instagram and through email. And again, it all means so much more than you know. So I will continue to keep you all updated, whether it be on my Instagram, the newsletter, or the podcast. Um, and yeah, I will stay positive. I'm hopeful, and recovery will continue for me. All right, mamas. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. If Balanced Working Mama podcast is one that you enjoy, please rate it, but also share it with another mama you know. And I will talk to you all later. Hey mama, I want to quickly tell you about the Empower Wellness Program. This is a dynamic 6-week group for working mothers who are tired of feeling overwhelmed, fatigued, burdened by mom guilt, but then also just not having enough time for themselves. This program takes all of that and transforms it into more wellness, more time for yourself, better priorities, community with other mothers, but then overall balance in your work, motherhood, and wellness. To learn more about the Empower Wellness Program, head over to balanceworkingmama.com. There you can find when the next program begins, what to expect, but then also how to sign up. Hope to see you in the next group. Hey mama, thank you for listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast. If you love this podcast, please be sure to rate it and share it with another mama that you know. And don't forget to follow me and Balanced Working Mama on Instagram. I'll talk to you soon.